All Elite Wrestling (AEW) is no stranger to high-stakes, brutal spectacle matches, and one of its most talked-about formats is Blood and Guts, a double-ring, caged war spectacle inspired by wargames. As the promotion eyes future innovations, AEW President Tony Khan has recently addressed whether the company might stage both men's and women's versions of Blood and Guts. His remarks suggest that while no final decisions have been made, the idea is very much on the table. The legacy and stakes of Blood and Guts. To understand the significance of Tony Khan's comments, one must first appreciate how Blood and Guts fits within AEW's identity and brand. What is Blood and Guts? Blood and Guts is AEW's evolution of the classic Wargames match. It features two rings side by side, both surrounded by a steel cage structure with a roof, and typically involves factions or teams entering in staggered intervals. The match is built to resolve deep, personal feuds. It is violent, chaotic, and dramatic. AEW's history with the format. Since its inception, AEW has used Blood and Guts infrequently, reserving it as a marquee attraction for big rivalry conclusions. The last such match took place in July 2024, when Team AEW, led by Swerve Strickland, defeated the Elite. Because of its logistical complexity, two rings, cage structure, arena layout, the match requires special planning, ticketing, and staging. Khan himself has acknowledged these challenges in earlier statements. Why fans and talent are calling for a women's version. As AEW's women's division has grown in both depth and popularity, some wrestlers and fans have expressed the desire to see women compete in more extreme formats. Among the most ambitious of these is the notion of staging a women's Blood and Guts match, not merely as a novelty, but as a fully fledged, equal counterpart to the men's version. One such call comes from Jamie Hayter, who has publicly challenged Thekla and her allies Thekla, Julia Hart, Sky Blue, etc., to settle their feud via a Blood and Guts match. This kind of feud-driven demand strengthens the possibility that AEW might seriously consider dual matches. Tony Khan's statements. Hopeful, careful, intentional. During AEW's Wrestle Dream media call on October 16, 2025, Tony Khan fielded questions about whether AEW might stage two Blood and Guts matches, one for men, one for women. His responses reflect cautious optimism, acknowledgement of challenges, and an openness to innovation. 1. Acknowledging the momentum, Khan said, there are some rivalries in the AEW men's locker room that are really bubbling, and getting very interesting, but I also know that the women's locker room is the most intense and the most competitive scene that we've ever had in AEW's women's wrestling. We are absolutely, I believe, heading toward where both the women wrestlers and the men's wrestlers will be settling issues in Blood and Guts. This remark signals that he sees the internal dynamics in both divisions as ripe for that kind of extreme, high-stakes culmination. It is not a guarantee, but a directional vision. 2. Avoiding full commitment for now. While expressing enthusiasm, Khan stopped short of confirming specifics. Without committing exactly who and when and where and what, I think we are building towards those things. Yes, I do think that is something that we could aspire to, having Blood and Guts, men's and women's matches. He made clear that health, timing, logistics, and roster readiness all become factors in whether both formats can be executed. In the same media session, when specifically asked if there will be more than one Blood and Guts match that year, Khan said, having men's and women's Blood and Guts matches is something they could aspire to. It depends on who's healthy coming out of Wrestle Dream. Hence, the constraint of injuries or roster availability is already being factored in. 3. Earlier remarks and logistical concerns. Prior to the media call, Khan had already teased the potential for another Blood and Guts event in 2025, though no double ring show was yet confirmed. I think there is great potential for a Blood and Guts event. It requires a unique seating setup. With a two-ring setup, it's not a show that is up right now, but I do think there is a good chance of that. Please stay tuned. He emphasized that seating layouts, e.g., how the cage and the two rings change sightlines, must be carefully planned, and that announcing it prematurely could create logistical issues. One article characterized his response as coy, noting he responded in minimal terms while hinting strongly at intent. Key challenges AEW faces before launching dual Blood and Guts. Tony Khan's optimistic tone does not obscure the many obstacles AEW must address to stage both men's and women's versions of Blood and Guts. Here's a look at the core challenges and variables. A. Roster depth, health, and storyline justification. Sufficient credible feuds. A Blood and Guts match is not used lightly, it must be rooted in storylines with stakes, personal animosity, and equitable team balance. For both genders, there must be deep, sustained rivalries to justify the brutality. Healthy participants. Since the match is physically punishing, injury or absence of key talent could derail plans. Khan himself noted that readiness of talent coming out of Wrestle Dream will be a factor. Roster structure. Teams or factions must be balanced and credible, not just randomly assembled. Building that depth takes time. B. Logistics, staging, and venue planning. Double ring and cage structure. The setup for a blood and guts match is complex: 2 rings side by side, heavy steel cage, and roof. This demands more from venue infrastructure, production design, and crew coordination. Seating arrangements. As Khan noted, the audience sees the seat maps, and the layout must anticipate and accommodate visibility, cage height, ring positioning, etc. Ticketing and marketing. The event must be sold as a spectacle. The seating and ticket pricing would need to reflect the gravity of a double match card. Premature announcement risks overpromising or logistical mismatches. Schedule and pacing. Staging 2 blood and guts matches in one event or 2 separate events affects show pacing, broadcast windows, and stamina of audience engagement. C. Expectations, comparisons, and precedent. High bar to meet expectations. Fans will expect both matches to feel legitimately brutal, emotionally weighted, and satisfying. If one match outshines the other or if one feels tacked on, backlash could result. Comparisons to men's match. The women's version, if executed, will inevitably be compared to past men's blood and guts matches. It must measure up in intensity, storytelling, and crowd reaction. Risk of overuse. Part of what makes blood and guts special is its rarity. Overexposure diminishes spectacle. AEW must be careful not to water it down by making it too frequent. The potential impact on AEW's women's division. If AEW proceeds with a women's blood and guts match alongside the men's version, it could mark a landmark moment for the women's division. Here's how. Elevated prestige. Being entrusted with a match of such magnitude signals that women's storylines are considered equally worthy of the most extreme stipulations. Talent morale and ambitions. Wrestlers may feel more opportunities exist, encouraging deeper feuds and personal stakes. Fan engagement and viewership. A dual event may draw new attention, as fans of either division tune in. It could also spark media coverage and broader visibility. Creative possibilities. Writers and bookers can push boundaries in storytelling, alliances, betrayals, and character evolution under a more intense spotlight. However, the pressure is real. If the women's blood and guts exceeds expectations, it sets a new bar. If it underperforms, critics may argue it was premature. What could the timeline look like? Based on Tony Khan's statements and AEW's current trajectory, here's a speculative outline of how things might proceed. 1. Post-Wrestle Dream assessment. After the Wrestle Dream event, where the women's match Hater vs. Thekla is booked, AEW leadership will evaluate injuries, momentum, and storytelling momentum. Khan has already flagged this as a pivot point. 2. Announcing concept or building momentum. AEW could tease or gradually build toward a dual blood and guts setup, perhaps in the early 2026 calendar, allowing time to map logistics, storyline arcs, and roster alignment. 3. Venue and ticketing strategy. Selecting arenas capable of housing the double ring cage setup and designing seat maps that accommodate cage sightlines will be a major step. Early announcement of such a layout would help fans anticipate the spectacle. 4. Story confirmation and team reveals. As the event date approaches, AEW can unveil teams or factions with dramatic rivalries, aligning plotlines to escalate tension, betrayals, promos, confrontations. 5. Staging both matches, same show or separate. One option is to place both men's and women's blood and guts matches on the same pay-per-view or special event. Another is to stagger them, one at one event, the other later. AEW will need to choose based on pacing, runtime, and talent stamina. 6. Post-match reflections and follow-up. After the matches, AEW will likely capitalize on the fallout, title feuds born from the chaos, shifting alliances, and continuing bitterness for unresolved issues. Risks, opportunities and fan perspectives. When innovations are proposed in wrestling, they evoke both excitement and skepticism. Here's a balanced look at what might be gained, and what could be challenged. Opportunities. Differentiation in the market. Running both genders in the same extreme format sets AEW apart from competitors and underscores its ambition. Elevating women's wrestling further. It reinforces the idea that women deserve the same high-stakes matches. Storytelling depth. The match type encourages long-term storytelling, faction warfare, and spectacle that encourages viewer loyalty. Merchandising and promotion. Blood and guts events tend to generate buzz, posters, video promos, social media hype, etc. Risks. Overextension of roster. If a division lacks depth or key wrestlers are injured, the product may suffer. Logistical missteps. Poor seating layouts, cage visibility issues, or broadcasting problems could undercut the spectacle. Disparity between matches. If one match feels weaker or less compelling, fans may criticize balance or execution. Burnout. Overuse of extreme match types historically erodes their specialness. Many fans have voiced hopes for a women's blood and guts, seeing it as overdue recognition. But they also caution that execution must be careful and respectful. If AEW miscalculates, backlash could be swift among a passionate wrestling audience.